Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. How have you been? Exciting news, maybe not for you, but it is for me. I reached 100 subscribers, which is like super cool, and I just wanted to say thank you to everyone that has stuck around and people who have just recently subscribed, and all of my brothers over at Goodreads who came and supported my channel. Yeah, thank you, and I hope that you'll keep watching my videos. Yeah. Anyways, I have some books that I want to discuss. I only ended up reading 3 books in the month of December, and then I ended up forgetting, because I'm an idiot, forgetting to mention one book that I had read in November for my November wrap-up. So I'm just going to include that in this one, because I don't understand how I forgot to include this book in my wrap-up, because it ended up being like one of my most favorite books that I've like ever read, which is insane. So let's just get started with the book that I forgot to discuss in November. The book that I forgot to talk about in November was Fury Born, and that is by Claire Legrand. This book was freaking phenomenal. I was fortunate enough to receive an advanced copy of it, an electronic advanced copy of it last year. This book comes out on May 22nd, which happens to be my birthday, which is pretty cool. So I'm definitely going to be going to the bookstore when this comes out on my birthday and buying this for my birthday gift, like, to myself, because I loved it. Before I kind of talk a little bit about what this, whole story is about, I just want to say that I honestly think that this is going to go down as being one of the most epic YA fantasy series of all time. It's categorized as like YA, romance, fantasy. I do think it's kind of like borderline new adult. And I know when people think like new adult, they start to think like, oh, that means that there's like a bunch of sex and stuff in there. It's not really like that. To me, new adult just means it's a little bit more mature. So yes, it's a little bit more sexually explicit. There's swearing going on. But this book was awesome. It's sexually diverse, it's racially diverse, and I think a lot of people are going to really love this. So a little bit about Fury Born. I really liked that it was told in dual perspectives, and it jumps from the past to the present, alternating like chapters. So that kind of kept me engrossed as a reader. Like, I never felt like there was a moment that went by that I was kind of skimming over anything or that I felt bored, which says a lot about the book, because I feel like for a first installment for a fantasy series that's over 500 pages, it can get a little bit boring, because there's usually kind of a lot of introduction to different characters, there's a lot of world building going on, and sometimes it can be a lot for your brain to process. And I didn't feel overwhelmed at all while I was reading this, or even by the end of it. I felt like I understood everything that was going on. So the very first chapter was pretty intense, because you're following the Blood Queen, Riel, and she has just given birth to her baby, Eliana, I believe that's how you pronounce her name, and she asks Simon, this like young boy, he's like under 10, to take her child and escape and hide her from this like evil male angel. And so from there you're kind of following or it's alternating chapters from when her daughter is like growing up and kind of discovering her heritage and where she came from, and then it jumps back to Riel, the Blood Queen, how she became the Blood Queen and why she had to give away her daughter. But I don't want to say too much about it, because I feel like you kind of need to go into this with maybe just reading the synopsis of it, just to kind of see maybe what it's about. But this is definitely a book that you don't want to go reading a ton of reviews about it, and because it's kind of, I like the element of surprise, and I feel like you'll appreciate this book a lot more if you don't do a bunch of research, you just read it. The author is already working on the second installment to the series, and yes, it's going to be a trilogy, so I'm pretty sure that the series is going to be kind of wrapped up, I would say, in about 3.5 years. But a part of me, and I know this is so weird to say, a part of me really hopes that this author, like George R.R. Martin's the crap out of the series, because I don't think it should be a trilogy. It's a new adult kind of like series, like borderline new adult, because the main female protagonist is like in her, she's like 18, and then the male, can't talk right now, the male protagonist is mid-20s, like pushing like late 20s, and I feel like I kind of want her to drag this series out and to kind of really follow them into adulthood. I don't want it to just like be a 3-part like series, if that makes sense, because I feel like this is such a unique premise and the characters are really unique. She writes wonderfully, like lyrically, and I just don't want it to just stop with 3 books. It'll be a more memorable series if she drags it out a little bit, and not in a bad like drag out way, because George R. R. Martin's books, like Song of Fire and Ice, drags out, but it's not bad. Like there's a lot of detail and a lot of opportunity for growth with different characters. I don't know if that's weird to say. I think that you should definitely add it to your TBR. I haven't done a review for it, but I will link down below the Goodreads like link so that way you can read up a little bit more on the synopsis. The next book that I'm like so excited to talk about, this is a book that I ended up reading in December. Once again, I was fortunate enough to receive an advance copy of it, but I loved it so much that the day that it came out, on January 2nd, I marched my butt all the way to Chapters, which is like just down the street from my work. And I ended up picking up a physical copy of it. And that is The Wolves of Winter, and that is by Tyrell Johnson. Honestly, I don't care to spend my money, even though I was fortunate enough to receive a free copy of this and to review it, because I want to support the author. And I think it's important as a book reviewer that it's great we receive free copies of books or advanced copies, but I also think it's really important to go out and support the author too. And I did a full review for this. It's spoiler free. I will link it down below. It's probably one of my most favorite reviews. But this, honestly, I know it's January and I read this last year, but this is probably going to be in my like top 10 because I loved it so much. It's a YA, like it's categorized as YA dystopian with like a little dash of sci-fi, and there's like a little touch of romance in it too, but it's not gross or like cheesy or anything. There's just like hints of it, but I loved that this was more of kind of like borderline YA, like new adult, like 'cause the female protagonist in this is like 23-ish and the male protagonist in this is like mid-20s, pushing late 20s possibly. We don't actually know his age, and he doesn't even know his age because of what was going on at the time in this kind of world. So it was kind of like interesting. So it was just kind of like an estimate. I know it's like dystopian and it's like kind of like sci-fi and stuff, but it was honestly kind of like scarily like realistic, because you have the world has kind of gone to war with each other, and a plague has kind of broken out, and there's just a bunch of like corruptness going on within the political system, the government and stuff, and you're following a girl and her family is just trying to survive, and she ends up running into this this dude named Jax. And I also loved that the author weaved in poetry throughout this book. So let's see if I can find it here, but yeah, it's Walt Whitman, which he's like awesome. I love Walt Whitman, but I loved how he like incorporated, you know, different lines of poetry throughout. So this was like totally right up my alley because I absolutely love poetry. But yeah, you guys should go and add this to your TBR. So the next book that I ended up reading, which was like super duper disappointing, so Overdrive by, I don't even know how to say her last name, Dawn Ias? Yes, I have no idea. This was horrible. I pushed through it because I don't DNF books. I just don't believe in DNFing them. I like to see it through to the end and then give a really critical and harsh review. I'm following a girl who her and her sister have kind of gone through the foster care system, and later on this super wealthy dude ends up adopting her or fostering her, and he ends up fostering a few other like kind of delinquent kids, as well. And then he says like, I'll pay you if you boost these particular cars because I am a hardcore car collector. And that's pretty much the story. There's like, this is probably one of the most anticlimactic books that I've ever read. There was like nothing going on. There was kind of like an angsty romance too. And I was kind of like waiting because he's like building it up, and you're kind of like waiting for confirmation for the author to say like, hey, they're together. And then all of a sudden I flip to the next chapter and it's talking as if they're already together. But I was like, did I like skip over something, like, or miss something? Like, when did they confirm this? Like, it was just all over the place and I didn't like it. So by the time I finished the end of this, I don't know why, and this is super dorky of me, but I had that song, Tokyo Drift by Teriyaki Boy stuck in my head. And then I was like really wanting to go and watch like Fast and Furious after I finished reading this, because I was like, this is just a horrible car book and I want to go watch like a really good car movie after. But I wouldn't recommend this. The last book or collection of poetry that I ended up reading was Emily Dickinson's Selected Poems. You either like her or you don't. I absolutely love Emily Dickinson. Her poems are kind of depressing, or they're either delightful, or they're about love, unrequited love. My two favorite poems by Emily Dickinson are Parting and The Soul's Storm. I posted those on my Goodreads, so if you want to read them, I will link that down below in case you're interested. But I love Emily Dickinson, and I kind of just wanted to wrap up the year with some poetry because I am a poetry fanatic. Those are all of the books that I ended up reading for December. Didn't read too much. Honestly, I was pretty content with the amount of books that I had read in 2017. Originally my goal was 50 books and I ended up reading like about 109 or 110 or something. So I didn't really care to read a ton of books in December because I had some holidays. I wanted to spend time with my family, my friends, and just enjoy the season. So I wasn't really like putting pressure on myself to read a whole bunch, and I wanted to kind of take time with the books that I did read. So that's it. That concludes this video. Thank you so much for watching. Maybe you'll like the video, maybe you'll subscribe, I don't know, but I hope you do, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Take it easy.